We're just at the beginning of this journey, and we really have to find the tools to allow us to move on that journey. There is no one silver bullet. There is no one principal actor. Actually, it's incumbent upon all of us to be agents of change.
We know in the next 9 years, we have to literally halve our emissions because we're having such incredible impacts on our planet that the feedback loops are already happening now. And we are going to have to move very fast. But we can't be only technological in our thinking. So if we're going to shift from coal, we can't just think that just by replacing with renewables is going to be sufficient. We have to bring people on the journey and communities. This means that we're going to have to take into consideration how we translate some of our thinking, our European Green Deal, for example, into a systems approach, putting in place key principles that look at people, planet, and prosperity at the same time, and then applying that across core system level orientations. So this next very important decade is going to have to think through a systems approach, but also take into consideration the incredible learnings from COVID. What did we learn from COVID? One, transformational change is possible, and it highlights the importance of resilience to a multitude of convergent shocks. So we need to learn from that experience. We need to look at technology, governance, and socioeconomic systems, which are actually currently mutating to respond to the crisis. So falling back to 20th century models of growth, planetary destruction, and inequality is not an option.
Now, current days, fortunately, we have a very open dialogue with all of the stakeholders involved, trade unions, mining complex-based companies. Maritsa is the largest energy company in Bulgaria. Also local authorities from the region. First to say that probably it's well to say that 10 out of 11 municipalities from the region are members of the agency, and this close collaboration gives us the opportunities to discuss in a very short way what is necessary to happen in order to recover. We need very strong communication with all of these potential impact people who are working in the coal mining and in the power plants, because we should change their perceptions and to convince them not to feel as victims. Actually, the just transition is great opportunity also for them, for their families, to have new job, to have new profession, to have even better life.
The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated and accelerated processes of transformations, which have of course been going on before and are in itself very challenging. The fight against global warming that is self-evident to IG Metall necessitates a fundamental transformation of our industries. The production of energy, of course, but also of base material, steel, for instance, or concrete. As well as the way we organize mobility, which is also a huge sector of carbon dioxide emissions. Hence, it's not only the coal sector which is strongly affected by the necessary ecological transformation. There's this huge challenge to reconcile the necessary ecological transformation of the industries with the creation of new occupational perspectives and social protection for the employees. And this challenge is, of course, even bigger in regions which are heavily dependent on a specific industrial sector or a specialized industry which has to undergo this major change. And we see them in the German coal regions, but also in the automotive clusters we have in the country and in steel production areas. That there's this huge challenge where you have a region dominated by one of these industries, really to find alternative perspectives.
Just transition is not only about restructuring of the economy, cutting emissions and providing different jobs, but it is much more about social relations and social capital, and people also believing in the future that we are trying to build. This vision of the future, it has to be shared by the communities and everybody, and it cannot be achieved with traditional methods of involvement and policy development. And it helps to understand where we are actually transforming, because if we are talking about just transitions, there is anyway we talk much more about what does the just mean, but where does the transition has to lead us is sometimes the question. If we want to really go for a bigger change in society or in a community, it's only possible if it takes into account and it's built on local resources. Resources that the stakeholders and community members and everybody who is part of the change, they can control and they can use, so that the change is not dependent on outside resources.
Well, the regions do not really include the greenhouse gas emissions reduction as their targets right now. And I think until we do that and really make it a priority and take this seriously, it will be very hard to push them or motivate them to build new economies and new business models. So I think from our perspective, the greenhouse gas emissions are not a national problem. They need to become a regional problem. And I think that we also will see in the future regions declaring their own net zero agenda and their own net zero targets. And for that, they need to really look at these protocols.
Let's not talk Build Back Better, because that pretty much is a business as usual discussion. And let's think about building forward. And building forward means not investing in the usual systems, ensuring that, one, we prompt investments in renewables or new types of technologies and empower communities in those communities at the same time. So that means thinking about bringing that technology, bringing that industry to those communities and offering it to them, or building it up from scratch. We're seeing in Poland, and of course the others that are representing some of those countries from Central and Eastern Europe will know better than me, but there's a huge services industry that is developing around renewables in the Central and Eastern European countries. And what I keep on hearing often from those countries is, we don't want to be dependent on Western technologies. We want to have our own technologies. We want to figure out how we can create our own ecosystems, our own economy. So we need to get better, West and East, at working together to ensure that there's knowledge exchange, and it's not just the West dumping their technologies on the East.